Barry Obama breaks silence on Trump's ape video, Bad Bunny, and 2028 election. Brian Tyler Cohen did a collab post with Barack Obama. I'm going to be honest, I'm a little jelly beans because I've been trying to get this interview.
Head toward a next general election cycle, we're going to be contending with a lot of the same infighting that's plagued Democrats before. You'll often have leftists and progressives butting up against liberals and moderates. And look, you are the ultimate pragmatist. And so what advice do you have as we head toward this election cycle, this eventual 2028 election cycle, so that we don't devolve into the same, 2016 era Bernie Hillary redux that feels like it always consumes the left?
Well, look, first of all, I think it's important to remember that the divisions in the
What is this camera, bro? They had a freehand cam and everything?
Democratic Party tend to get magnified in the media. Relative to the divides that exist in most other countries.
Wait, oh shit, I'm sorry. I started off the conversation without thanking Obama. Thank you, Obama. Thank you, Barack Hussein Obama. Obama doesn't do contentious interviews. It's not. Guys, I'm the #1 Obama glazer. Come on. I love Obama, and I would love to hear his takes on what his favorite songs are. I just basically would just ask him over and over again, like, what's your Spotify playlist for the next month? What's your Spotify playlist for the month prior? What's your Netflix playlist look like? This is what the conversation would be around, okay? It would be around that. Also, there are areas of agreement. You interviewed that Yemeni kid just to try to interview the guy who genocided his country. That's beyond the pale. Shh. Stop. But you don't know music?
Where you have a parliamentary system, you have multiple parties, and you got Green Party, and you got the center left party, and you've got a socialist party, and sometimes you got a communist party. Yeah. Our differences get exaggerated. Listen, Bernie Sanders believes, just like Nancy Pelosi believes, just like Chuck Schumer believes, just like Hakeem Jeffries believes, just like AOC believes, in equality and non-discrimination against people because of race or gender or sexual orientation. Well, all Democrats believe in that. That's a core value. Democrats believe that government should provide a strong safety net for people when they're down on their luck. Everybody I just mentioned believes in that. Everybody believes that there should be some regulation of the market so that you don't have monopolies and oligopolies that are simply dictating the terms of the economy, and that we should have a tax system that levels out some of the inequalities that result. So I think it's important for us to remind ourselves as a starting point, what do we have in common? Most of the time, the differences are tactical. Right? It has to do with, well, how much of a tax hike can people put up with? How much regulation should we be thinking about when it comes to...
Listen, he's said this before. We're all on the same team. All the Democrats are on the same team. It's just that some of them have more appetite and others don't, blah, 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 all this stuff. This is just like, it's not...
Climate change. And if we recognize that typically the arguments in the Democratic Party aren't about core values, but are really around tactics and how do you get stuff done.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, that's not true. Yeah, there's no difference between us. That's why he called up everyone and got them to drop out to stop Bernie. That's why they're all colluding behind the scenes throughout 2016 and 2020. No difference. Yeah, that's just not true. That's just not true. It's getting hard for me to criticize Barack Obama. I mean, or rather, not criticize Barack Obama because I want to do an interview with Barack Obama, which will, of course, be non-contentious, guys.
Now we can have a robust debate, and I want a robust debate.
Yeah.
And what we can also do is not try to nationalize every issue all the time. This last off-year election, I think, was a great example. You know, you've got a candidate like Spanberger in Virginia, who runs what would be considered a more centrist campaign and runs a terrific campaign. And then you've got Mondami in New York, who runs a explicitly socialist grassroots campaign and excites and mobilizes folks. And that can win in New York City. It probably could not win in Virginia. And that's okay. That's healthy.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we get into arguments. A recent one, this idea that the quote unquote abundance agenda is somehow a sellout, and folks on the left getting exercised because this is part of this sort of corporate Democrats trying to take over the party. Well, no, not really. What I think it is entirely legitimate to say, for example, we need to build more affordable housing, which is going to require higher taxes on people like me and people who are well off in order to subsidize the construction of affordable housing, let's say in a place like California, and also be able to say, you know what, there are a bunch of well-intentioned rules and zoning laws and so forth that baby boomers like me and existing homeowners.
He gets paid by Netflix. I don't trust Obama. I love the idea that Obama getting paid by Netflix implies where his like ideological worldview is, more so than, I don't know, the 8 years of him being the American president. The difference is Obama never endorsed Zoran and he campaigned extensively with Spanberger. Wonder why that is. Okay, Michael from Pennsylvania. Shh. Stop. I'm trying to secure an interview with Barry Hussein Obama. Feels like you're coming after a Muslim man, a Muslim communist, as a matter of fact, a little too aggressively. Okay, let's dial it back, please.
Have used.
We're just here to listen. We're not here to criticize. He's the former president now.
To block the construction of affordable housing, even in democratic cities. And so if we want to actually deliver housing rather than have some abstract argument, then we got to figure out not an either or of do we spend more money or do we reform some of these things that are preventing the construction of affordable housing. We have to do both. And I want us to have those arguments. And one last thing I think that's I've noticed in a lot of our internal arguments, a lot of which, by the way, are taking place online, and ordinary voters, this is all completely off their radar screen. Yeah. One of the things I think it's important for Democrats, for us also to recognize, progressives to recognize, folks on the left.
Please counteract these abundance talking points. Yeah, I mean, he's doing abundance because abundance is obviously exactly what his vision is for the party. The very fact that he claims there's like no fundamental difference, like we're all on the same playing field between socialists and like liberals is not correct. Like that's just not true at all. And the reason why he's like heavily on the abundance side is because abundance is supposed to be like the new version of third way neoliberalism, just like repackaged.
To recognize, it's possible for us to have a moral sense of what is right and true and what needs to be done, and also recognize that we are in a particular time and place here in America, and voters are not going to agree with us 100% on everything. And so it is not a sellout, it's not a betrayal to say that we're going to shape our agenda and our message in a way that allows us to build a working majority to get stuff done. And I think particularly around social issues, sometimes we get confused around this. You witness what happened in Minneapolis, and you say to yourself, morally speaking, that 5-year-old child who's standing in front of that SUV as his father's being dragged off, that child is equal to mine or any child. His immigration status, his nationality, does not change the love and decency that we should be showing that child. But what is also true is that we're a nation of laws, we have borders, and we've got to figure out an immigration policy that is orderly and that is fair and is enforced in a sensible way that is compatible with our values, but may not fully capture the degree to which that kid should have the same chances in life as a U.S. citizen kid. But, we've got to accommodate the reality that the majority of the American people think that there's a difference between somebody who's a U.S. citizen and somebody who's not, and that they want an orderly immigration system. And sometimes I think what happens in the online debate is if somebody suggests, well, we have to have some immigration enforcement, then somebody's going to point at that child and say, so you don't care about that kid.
Yeah.
So you must be a bad person. The same would be true, let's say, here in Los Angeles around the homeless issue. I think morally, ethically speaking, it is an atrocity that in a country this wealthy, we have people just on the streets. We should insist on policies that recognize their full humanity, people who are houseless, and be able to
Really pushing back there, Brian.
provide them the help and resources that they need. But we should also recognize that the average person, doesn't want to have to navigate around a tent city in the middle of downtown, and that we're not going to be able to build a working majority and support for the resources that we need to help folks like that, whether it's drug treatment or temporary housing or what have you. We're not going to be able to generate support for it if we simply say, you know what, it's not their fault, and so they should be able to do whatever they want, because that's a losing political strategy. That doesn't mean that we care less about those folks. It means if we really care about them, then we got to try to figure out how do we gain majority support and be practical in terms of what we can get through at this moment in time and build on those victories. That a lot of times is the arguments that are taking place, but they become sort of performative, and people start saying, oh, you're selling out, or conversely, I think sometimes folks at the center say, you're being impractical and dismissing legitimate critiques and concerns. And what we need to be able to do is to maintain both ideas at the same time, which is our long-term goals have to be driven by our values and our core beliefs and our ethics and our morals, and the sense that every person counts. And short-term, we got to win elections.
Right.
And anyway, the good news is, I think that the folks that we are fighting politically, the current White House, this administration, and their enablers, they're behaving so badly, they're doing such crazy stuff, that it shouldn't be hard for our side to coalesce around the areas where we agree on and focus on that. And I think that that is going to happen if we are effective in winning the midterms, if we then have a robust primary for who's going to be the next Democratic president. We shouldn't be afraid of having a robust debate. I want all comers to sort this out. I benefited from having about as grueling a primary as I could have. It made me a better candidate. It ultimately made me a better president because I had been tested. My ideas had been tested. The story I was telling about America had been tested. And that's what we should be
Let's have a robust debate, Mr. President. I'm just saying.
looking for, rather than...
Although he is saying this, but I feel like behind closed doors, he was definitely he was not so favorable towards debate.
expecting that somehow we're going to all come up with some consensus blueprint master plan that everybody's going to execute. Democrats aren't good at doing that anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think, one block of voters who I think there has been particular focus paid to right now is young voters. And, you were able to mobilize a generation of young voters in a way that hadn't been done before. I got involved in politics because of you. And in fact, a lot of millennials, folks my age, got involved in politics because of you. Like when I was a student, you could not find any other students on campus who were not supporting your campaign. Democrats and you had owned the cultural zeitgeist in a way that hadn't been done before, and frankly hasn't been done since. And we've seen a shift happen, obviously, from 2008, 2012 up to 2024.
Right.
And for the first time, we saw Democrats really lose their grip on culture in a way that hadn't happened before. And so what is your advice in terms of remobilizing?
Much to consider here. How did that happen after your charismatic run when you went on a tear for 8 years, much to consider. Hear me out. Because there is a lot of truth to people being like, Obama was black, and that was obviously like a massive problem for many white supremacists. There is truth to that. That's real. A lot of people's brains were bricked in the process where they were like, this is unacceptable. Having said that, however, maybe there was a little bit more to it, you know? Maybe a more serious approach to his legacy would revolve around what he didn't accomplish or what he ceded ground on, what he normalized, what he advanced in terms of foreign policy, American militarism abroad, you know, all this stuff may have played a role.
Generation of Americans that we've had trouble mobilizing up to this point.
Well, part of it has to do with the fact that I was young.
Yeah.
And
Maybe don't nominate octogenarians.
Look.
Yeah. Also, Obama winning the way he did proves you right about being able to win over races if you address their material needs. Yeah, but the great danger is they get extra racist after the fact if they experience buyer's remorse. That's the other side of the story. Turns out if you come in with like these big promises and then you don't actually follow through on that agenda, and there is a lot of setbacks internally. Like, I think, let's be real. What part of the reason why Obama's legacy is what it is because of the rotating villain structure. Did he have the charisma and the command over his own party to overcome it? I think so. 100%. He didn't push far enough. He didn't push hard enough, is what I would say. If I was a hater, of course I'm not, which is why I think he's the best president of all time. Okay? I think he's the best president of all time. Please come on the show. Barack Obama, Barry O. Big fan. You did not blow the historic mandate, unlike anything we will ever see forever, honestly, unless there's like a literal FDR style candidate. We probably will never see that kind of historic mandate, is what I would say if I was not trying to secure an interview. I mean, you're in the room with me all the time, Barry O. Hey, come on now. Call him Bro Obama. He will come on for sure. Bro Obama, fold under no pressure.
I'm 64 now. I'm pretty healthy, 64. Feel great.
Yeah.
But the truth.
It's so funny that he had the acid reflux right after he said that, and the camera panned away. That's pretty funny.
There's half of the references that my daughters make about social media, TikTok, etc. I don't know who they're talking about.
Yeah.
There is a element of, at some point, you age out. You're not connected directly to the immediate struggles that folks are going through. And so I'm not making a hard and fast rule here, but I do think that Democrats do well when we have candidates who are plugged into the moment, to the zeitgeist, to the times, and the particular struggles that folks are thinking about as they look towards the future rather than look backward toward the past. And so some of it is choosing candidates who check that box. I do think that there is an element of joy that Democrats lost sometimes. Our campaign was fun. We had look, it wasn't always fun for me, but we built a community. We gave people a sense that if you are part of this, you're doing something meaningful. And it wasn't just talk. Young people ran our campaigns. We empowered them. We put them in charge. They were out there figuring stuff out. I'm not the person who was figuring out our media strategy. I was not the person who was out there, knocking on doors and talking to voters and creating events. It was 20 and 30-year-olds. And so what happened in our campaign, and what you recently saw in Mondami's campaign in New York,
yeah,
when there's that sense of joy and engagement and involvement, then people feel like, all right, this is not just some transactional grind. This is me becoming part of a community. And
okay, I'm falling asleep. No disrespect, but I do think that, yeah, Obabe talked about abolishing the filibuster, which I guess is not technically new. Apparently, he's been saying that, but he's woke now.
In the past, to break down some of the institutional barriers for us getting stuff done, just because, well, it's always been done that way. I'll give you an example that frustrated the heck out of me when I was president, which was the filibuster in the Senate. The Senate is already structurally skewed and anti-majoritarian, whether it's trying to pass civil rights legislation in the 60s or trying to get gun control legislation. Even though majority of people support it, Delaware, Wyoming have the same number of senators as California. You then compound that with a filibuster. The truth is that Democrats for some time have been traditionalists in wanting to preserve that when it blocks us from making government effective, which in turn makes people feel like government is corrupt and not caring about them.
Which lends itself
Which
to the
then lends
Republicans.
itself, it gives folks like Trump an opening. Redistricting is another good example of where I strongly believe we should not be having politicians draw lines that determine who's voting for them. We should have voters decide who their politicians are. The fact that Governor Newsom here in California and others said, well, if they're going to try to gerrymander their way out of losing this upcoming midterm, then we're going to respond. And we're going to respond in a lawful way where we put it up to a referendum and let people decide and not just give away the store because of traditions. That was the right response. So I don't want us to simply duplicate the behavior of the other side. I don't want us to have a slash and burn strategy where we don't care about rule of law. We don't care about some of the guardrails around our democracy. We start lying and having no regard for the truth the way the other side seems to be comfortable with right now. If that's how we fight, then we lose what we're fighting for. That doesn't mean we have to get punked or be saps, to cling to traditions just for the sake of tradition. I think what we have to continually evaluate is, in this moment in time, how do we make sure that we can advance our agenda in a way that reflects what's good for ordinary folks, not special interests, simply the well-to-do, and how do we do that in a way that's consistent with integrity, honesty, democracy, the values that we claim to want to uphold. And I think it's possible to do that. We shouldn't get discouraged by the fact that we have a tougher job. What we should do is expect that our side...
I'm Mr. Abolish the Filibuster. I've been a filibuster abolitionist for a minute. What is the historic reason for a filibuster as a non-American? It's the Senate is the greatest deliberative body of all time. The Senate is the greatest deliberative body of all time. It's the adult version of the House of Representatives.